Okay, my name is Nancy McCaffrey. I'm a librarian at Emma Clark Library in Setauket, New York. It is November 19th, 2018, and I am interviewing Orlando T.M. Maione on this day for the Veterans History Project at the Library of Congress. Hello, how are you today?
I'm very good, thank you.
All right, so let's start with some biographical stuff. Where were you born?
I was born in Astoria, Queens, New York.
Okay, and what date?
October 19th, 1935.
Okay. And what were your parents' occupations?
They're both immigrants. My mother was a trained seamstress, and my father was a trained mechanic.
Okay. And where did they come from?
They came from Italy, not the same town. My mother was from Sorrento, and my father from Naples. Okay. But they met in New York.
Okay, very nice. Okay. And did you have any siblings?
I have an older brother, 3 years older, who has passed away in '93, and he served in Korea.
Okay. All right. Did you join the service, or were you drafted, or did you enlist?
Both.
How does that work?
Okay. I was a student at the University of Notre Dame in architecture. I'm an architect. Architecture at most schools, including Notre Dame, was a 5-year course for a bachelor's. I got my draft notice in the 4th year of my architecture program, the June of my 4th year. I went to my local draft board, showed him the catalog and the cancel check for my 5th year from my parents, saying it's a 5th-year program. I'd be more than happy to serve. I had every intention of serving, but I still have to finish the 5th year. The draft board said they don't recognize 5-year programs. So they denied my student deferment.
Oh, okay.
So we went round and round, and I went back to school in September. And when I came home for Christmas, I went back to see if everything was okay. And the recruiting sergeant said, it's not okay, we have a bench warrant for your arrest since you didn't show up. And I said, how do I resolve this? I'm in school until next June. He says, look, why don't you join? Give us another year. Instead of 2 years, you give us 3 years as an enlister, and then you can pick the time you want to come in, pick your branch of service, pick your specialty, pick your duty post, because they have a new program called Choice, Not a Chance. So I got a hold of their contract, took it to the family lawyer. He says it's a legitimate contract. They don't deliver, you're honorably discharged. Of course, you have to be able to provide everything they need and pass all. So I said, that's fair. So I signed up. And what I signed up for was the following June, when I graduated, U.S. Army Military Intelligence as an officer stationed in Italy.
Very nice. And you got everything you wanted?
Just about.
Okay.
We'll get into.
Okay. Did you hold any jobs before you entered, or you?
Yes, I was. Every summer I spent as an intern working in New York for a large architectural firm. It was one of the largest, the 7th largest in the United States. So every summer, I started in my sophomore year, so every summer they hired me back, they liked me. And even when I went into the military, they held my post. They guaranteed me a position since I was serving.
Okay.
So, and I worked for them afterwards too.
Okay, good. So you went into the military sort of forced, sort of not forced. Okay. So what year was that when you actually went into the military?
1958.
And did you leave any family behind? Were you married or?
No. I'd just been out of college. So it was only my parents and my brother.
Okay. And you were in which branch again?
U.S. Army Military Intelligence.
Okay. And why did you choose?
That's a story in itself, too. In my junior year at Notre Dame, I lived off campus for a semester in a widow's house who rented furnished rooms for extra money. And there were 2 rooms, and across the hall was an older gentleman who turned out to be a veteran. That we had different programs, so I didn't see him on a regular basis. Mm-hmm. But the lady did not. She was a Polish immigrant. She did not allow smoking in the house, and in those days, everyone smoked. So we went outside to smoke whenever we wanted a cigarette. So we were sitting on the front stoop and talking, and one day I came in and he was gone. And he didn't show up for a month. And I asked the lady, I said, what happened? She says, he's paid up. He's paid up for the whole year. He'll be back. He just said, don't worry, I'll be back. And he didn't show up for a month. So when he came back and we're sitting on the stoop smoking, I said, where'd you go? She says, I can't tell you. I said, what do you mean you can't tell me? You don't disappear. Were you sick? No. I said, so what happened? He says, I'm in the military still. I said, oh, what do you do? He said, I'm in military intelligence. I says, I never heard of that. What does that do? He says, I can't tell you. I said, yo, come on, how do I find out? He says, you have to join. Okay. And that was it. I never heard another word. And in January, I went back on campus. I never saw him again. So when I had to enlist, I'm saying, I don't want to be in the infantry and just, I want to do something. I want to accomplish something. So I said, I want to be in military intelligence. And the sergeant said, I never heard of that. He couldn't find it in any of his books, and I'm telling myself, this is good. I've got a branch of the service that's really going to be fun. So that's why I picked it. Of course, I didn't know what it was. I had a vague idea what it was. But because it was so secretive,
Right.
I thought it was going to be a lot of fun.
So you didn't have to take a test or anything to...
No. As a matter of fact, people who are recruited for it are recruited during basic training based on their entry tests and their psychological tests, and they're picked few and far between. Okay. To enlist, I still had to pass all the tests once I was selected.
Okay, so you went into basic training, which was where?
It was supposed to be in Fort Dix, and that's where the story starts. And when I reported to Fort Dix, I was there for a week. In the first week, it was learn your number, basic drill formations, your haircut, physical. And the second week, the entire battalion was told, we've got a new group of what they call 90-day wonders, who are all the ROTC graduates that June from various colleges all over the country who were coming to Fort Dix for their formal training. Fort Dix could not handle 2 battalions of trainees. They could only do one at a time. And since the 90-day wonders were all officers, they shipped us to Fort Benning, Georgia.
Okay.
Fort Benning was not a training facility at the time. They had not, the part of the camp they sent us to had not been used since World War II. And then it was used to house German POWs, which I never knew we had in Fort Benning. So it was an experience, which is why I wrote about it. Remember, it was 1958. Segregation was still in effect. The Southerners, rednecks, and I have nothing against them except I never met one until I went to Fort Benning. They made a point of telling us They did not like New Yorkers. They did not like college kids. They did not like Catholic Jews. They did not like blacks, Puerto Ricans, or anyone who was associated with them. And our battalion, being New York, was all of the above. Yeah. So we knew we were in for a hard time. And to me, I still think they were fighting the Civil War. They did everything to us that was really bad. Anyway, so it was an experience that started the whole training. And it was bad because they weren't official trainees. They had never done training of a battalion before, of recruits. So they didn't have the experience. They didn't have any physical training instructors. So they borrowed one from the adjacent airborne school. Airborne at Fort Benning were the best of the best. They were all regular Army. They were all in perfect shape. They'd been in the military for a long time. That physically they could do anything. They were just there for the parachute training. They gave us one of their physical instructors who treated us like airborne troops. And we're all New Yorkers, just out of college. Most of us were not in shape. We had some who weren't in college. In those days, a lot of the juvenile delinquents used to get choices. You go into jail or you go into the service. Make your choice. Either way. So we had a lot of juvenile delinquents in our group, which caused us a lot of problems. We were not in shape to take. I mean, some of the guys could do push-ups, but not 30 push-ups the way to airborne. So it really hurt us more than helped us. And the instructor had no mercy that we were recruits. To the point where one day, we were in training about 3 weeks. They marched us to the infirmary to give blood. We had all volunteered to be a battalion, 100% volunteered to give blood. Mm-hmm. When they tested our blood, almost all of us had iron deficiency. They couldn't use our blood because of Fort Benning in Georgia in the summer. When you wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning, it's 110 degrees, and it gets worse all day. And being Northerners, even if you had a couple of hot days, it was not like the hot, humid Georgia air. So that did not endear us to the commandant, who wanted 100% donation for the Red Cross. Right. So that caused another problem. So we didn't give blood, and it got us worse. Then, a month into training, I was called into the captain's office and told my father had died of a heart attack. He had never been sick, and it was a sudden heart attack, and they were sending me home on a 10-day emergency leave. I didn't have any money, so the Red Cross gave me a loan. And when the word got back to my group, my barracks, they all took up collection and gave me pocket money. So I went home for 10 days and took care of, with my brother, family arrangements. It devastated my mother. I mean, she was the one that found the body when she came home from work. It was all unexpected. Mm-hmm. I'd never done a funeral. I've never done picking caskets, selecting a burial plot, the whole thing. So that was my 10 days. When I went back to Fort Benning, my class had progressed 2 weeks into their training in critical programs that I could not pick up or ignore. So they told me I could not join my regular group. So they put me in the next group, which also happened to be New Yorkers. And I didn't know any of them. At least the first group, since we started together, I got to know them. What I did whenever I had free time is my old group was only a few blocks away, so if I had a break, I'd go over and talk to them. And they started telling me things to expect in the training. So I had little information that other people didn't have. As a side story, every military group and most corporations always think there's a plant put there by administration to test to see if everything's going okay, to see if you're being trained, the food, and you report back. Whether it's rumor or whatever, it's been standard every time I've been in an organization. Because I had knowledge of some things that were coming up, and I used to tell people, oh, today they thought I was the plant. Also, I was the only one in the battalion that already had an assignment after basic training. Because as a recruit, you have no choices.
Right.
At the end, they will tell you where they want you to go. And it could be cook school to being a chaplain. And I was the only one that really had career established. So there was rumors that I was the plant. So when I started coming up with the information of what was going to happen, they were fairly convinced. And I did not change their mind. I did not acknowledge or deny. It was coming to my advantage. And the reason I brought that up, I'll tell you a story about that first. On one of the classes, they were asking for volunteers. And in the military, you really don't volunteer, you're appointed. And you've heard that before. So this morning, the sergeant, who did not like me, as well as everybody else, it wasn't personal. He just didn't like anybody. He picked me and 3 other guys to clean out an old classroom area, which was outside, that had been overgrown with poison ivy. And we were to clean it out so the class could have their classes there. Remember, this place hadn't been used since 45. So it was 13 years of overgrowth. As a toddler, I had gotten a bad case of poison ivy that almost killed me. I was highly susceptible. It really, literally almost killed me. So as soon as I heard we were going to clean poison ivy, I went to the sergeant. I said, I will do anything you want. Clean latrines, do bathrooms, whatever you want, but I can't work in poison ivy. I'm allergic. He says, I don't like slackers. And I'm putting you in charge of the detail. So we went and we cleaned out poison ivy all day. The next day, everything that was exposed was red, blistered, and oozing, because I got poison ivy. Nobody else got it as bad as I did. Some of them got a little rash, but nothing like my face and hands. So I went up to him the next morning, and I said, can I go to sick bay to get some lotion for my poison ivy? He says, you're faking it. And that really bothers me. He says, we have another classroom. I'm putting you in charge of another detail, and you're going to clean out more poison ivy. And I'm going, okay. So I go, and we're cleaning out poison ivy. At break time for cigarettes, I moved to the side of the road, rolled up my sleeves, took off my shirt, rolled up my pants, and I'm trying to dry in the sun. And I'm just, I really look bad. This Jeep pulls up. An officer comes out, a lot of medals and a lot of brass on his hat. And I didn't know ranks. I knew he was an officer. So I jumped up and saluted. He said, soldier, what are you doing here? I said, I'm on a break from the detail. He says, don't you know you have poison ivy and it's contagious? I said, yeah. He says, then why aren't you in sick bay? I says, my sergeant won't let me go. He says, tell me about this. He says, which sergeant? And I pointed to the guy. I said, you know, we did it yesterday. I told him I was allergic. He insisted I go, put me in charge. When I showed him I broke out, he put me on another detail, and we're cleaning up more. He says, I'll take care of this. He told his driver, he says, take the soldier to the sick bay, then come back and pick me up. We never saw that sergeant again.
Really? Wow.
It turns out he was the Surgeon General doing an inspection of the base. And when he found out what the sergeant was abusing military property, and that's what soldiers were considered, he got rid of him. Lord knows where he was.
Wow.
So once that word get out, with the rumors that I was the plant, if I could get rid of a sergeant, anyway, I got the lotion and everything, and I was fine. A little scarring, but it was okay. But we got rid of one sergeant. The second thing that convinced the commanding officer, another morning they asked for volunteers. And my brother, being in the Marines, said, you never volunteer. Whatever they tell you it is, it's not true. It's just they're covering something up. And whatever it is, you could probably get killed. So never volunteer. So this morning, the new sergeant says, I want any volunteers who could paint. I'm going, how bad can that be? Paint a latrine, paint a barn. It's painting. I mean, it's better than picking up cigarette butts. I'll volunteer. 4 of us step forward. And the sergeant said, how many of you can do fine art? This isn't a house. 2 of the guys stepped back. They were house painters. And I had done oils in high school and college, and the other guy did too. He said, okay, you 2 report to the captain. We go. During World War II, one of the prisoners had started a painting about 20 by 30, fairly large size, of a German officer. And it was all in gray and black with the Nazi uniform and the uniform, but never finished it. There was no facial features. It was just, you can see it was an officer with the hat and everything, but it was never finished. And he left it when he was repatriated in 45. They were going to get a new commandant of the camp. And what they wanted to do is convert this painting into a portrait of the new commandant using color photograph that they provided. And they asked the 2 of us, can you convert this into a U.S. officer and make him look like these photographs? So I said, can we talk? So I talked to the other guy. He said, yeah, that shouldn't be a problem. The proportions are the same. We changed the color of the gray uniform into the green. We do they didn't do the face, so I can do the face. And I said, I can do the fabric and I'll do all the metals. So he said, yeah, we'll do it. So we told the captain, yeah, we can do that. He says, you have a week. Can you do it in a week? And we said, sure. Do you have supplies? He said, no. Here's the keys to the Jeep. Here's the voucher. You go downtown to Columbus, Georgia, and buy what you need to do the painting. And then we'll give you the time off from duty to finish the painting. So we go downtown in the Jeep, the 2 of us, and we decided, we might as well take advantage of this. I said, what if you go first and buy the supplies you need? Of course, you need flesh color and the brushes you want. And half of the supplies we both need, the turpentine, the linseed oil, and all that other stuff. And then I'll go and just kick around town and have a Coke or something. And then I'll go in and buy the stuff I need for all the metals because I need a lot more colors. And then you take the Jeep and you do whatever you want. He said, yeah, that's good. So he goes in, he goes buying his stuff, and I go in after. So while I'm out walking around town, I go and have a hamburger with the malted, which I never had. And I stumble upon a USO club, which was segregated for Catholics. I didn't know they had Catholic USOs and Protestant USOs in Georgia. So I walk into the USO, and it's empty. Of course, it's in the middle of the afternoon. There's not a soul in there. And on the wall, right by the door, are it was July. There were 7 photos of ladies in little black 8x10 frames, and one in the middle. I'm going, who are these ladies in the USO? And just then the head of the USO comes out, and she says, "Can I help you?" I said, "No, I just got some free time, and I'm in my fatigues." And she knows I'm from the camp. And I said, "Who are these ladies?" She said, "Oh, they're the Orchid Girls. They're the ones that spent the most time at the USO entertaining the troops from Fort Benning. They spent all their free time, and they do the baking and the serving." And I says, "And for that they get a photo?" "Yeah, and the orchid corsage." And I'm going, "That's not a lot." She says, "What would you do?" I said, "Oh, I don't know." I said, "How about a big orchid as you enter, and then the girls around, and then the one for the month right in the middle?" She said, "Can you paint an orchid?" I said, "Yeah, but I'm a recruit. I'll never be able to come and do it." She says, "What's your name?" And I gave her my name. And I said, "I gotta leave." So I went and I got my supplies and gave the guy the keys to the Jeep. And I forgot about it. I'm saying, there's no way. 2 weeks later, after we finished the painting, I get a call on a Saturday morning over the loudspeaker, which the entire camp can hear. Maione, report to the CO immediately. And that's not a good sign, especially on a Saturday morning. So I go running there, and I'm in my fatigues. And the captain's there, and he says, "I don't know who the hell you are, but I'm going to find out, and I'm going to get rid of you." I said, "What's the matter?" In my mind, I thought he had just found out about the sergeant and the poison ivy. He says, "Nobody in my company gets a pass on a weekend. Never on a Saturday. You've got a pass." I said, "For what?" He says, "I don't know, but here's your pass and go to the front gate." I'm going, okay. I'm saying, now I'm really in trouble. I go to the front gate. Here's the USO station wagon with the head of the USO sitting there. She says, "You're going to pay me an orchid." I said, "I think I'm in trouble." She says, "No. I called in a lot of favors. They owe me. They like the USO, and this is not a problem. You have any problem, you let me know, and we'll take care of it." I said, "Okay." So she said, "What do you need to paint the orchid?" I said, "I need a picture of an orchid that you like and some paints." She says, "Let's go." So we picked it all up, and I said, "I could probably do it in one day." She says, "No, you're doing us a favor. Why don't you take a couple of Saturdays? I can get you off for a couple of Saturdays." I go, "Okay." So the first Saturday, that Saturday, I had the maintenance people take everything off the wall, patch all the cracks, all the nail holes, and repainted it. And while they were doing that, the ladies, the orchid ladies, took me to a park and gave me a picnic with mint juleps and roasted chicken, and I had a wonderful day. So at the end of the day, she drove me back. Of course, I had looked at the wall, and I said, "Yeah, we can do that. Pick me up Saturday at the same time." So I painted them an orchid, and I do have a photograph of it. And we put it up, and they sent me a picture later on of how it looked with the pictures back up, and it really was good. So that convinced the CO that I was the plant. The only other incident happened because I had knowledge of what was happening. When we were being trained near the end, they call it squad tactics. What a squad does to act as a squad and point, and how do you cover each other, and what do you do when you're attacked, and how to take cover, and all that, formations. So my old group said, by the way, when you do square on you as you head towards the classroom, they'll do, your first class is inside, and they'll give you all the information on what to do. Then they're going to take you to the outside classroom to show you machine guns and everything else. But they will fire on you before you get to the classroom to see if you were listening inside. I said, okay. So I tell the group I'm marching with, I said, we're going to be shot at. And they said, no, they'll never do that. We're only recruits. They're not going to shoot us. I said, we're going to be shot at. If my friends tell me we're going to, yeah. So we're marching, and my friend said, when you get to the classroom, you'll see two hills on either side of the road. They have a machine gun in each one. As we're marching there, I said, this is where we get shot at. The ones who were listening to me believed me, and as soon as the firing started, we dove to the side, which is what you're supposed to do, took cover, and you pull your rifles, which we had no weapon, no bullets. And the rest of the group, the rest of the squad, stood in the middle of the road wondering, what the hell's naturally, in real life, they would all have been dead. But the other piece of that, one of the delinquents that had a choice of jail or army, one night, a couple of weeks before this, I'm a light sleeper, so I heard this dragging of a wooden crate coming down the wooden floor of the barracks, and it woke me up. And here's this young kid from Brooklyn dragging this wooden crate, you know, shh. He wasn't very big and the crate was heavy. I'm saying, what are you doing? He says, look what I found. He opens it, it's a box of grenades. I said, where did you get a box of grenades? He said, I couldn't sleep, so I took a little walk. And I came across this metal building that was locked. So I picked a lock to see if I could still do it. And it had all these boxes in it, and this one had a grenade. I said, what are you going to do with it? Our barracks are inspected every Saturday morning. Where are you going to put it? He says, oh. I said, you got to take it back. You're going to kill us, and you're going to get us all, you know, put on report. He says, yeah, okay. So he takes it back. But on that trip, when he heard, he was one of the ones I talked to, when he knew he was going to be shot at that night, he went back and picked up 2 smoke grenades. So when we was started to be shot at, he went, climbed up on the hill, pulled the pin and threw a smoke grenade at the sergeant on one hill, pulled the pin and threw the grenade at the other one. And since it was a smoke grenade, it blew up all smoke and all the sand. And 4 heavy sergeants, because they were all out of shape, ran faster than I've ever seen men run. And they ran everywhere. Nothing happened because A, it was the right thing to do if we were in combat. B, the officers had they couldn't stop laughing when they saw these sergeants who had machine guns running for their lives. But after that, they left us alone because I'm sure in their mind they're saying, these New Yorkers are all gangsters. They're going to kill us. We better lay off. So that was basic training.
That's funny. So when did you start your specialized training, and where was
Right
that?
after, it was at Fort Holabird in Maryland. We were giving 30 days leave, all the recruits were. After basic, if you pass everything, you get your assignment. Some people were cook school, chaplain assistant, infantry, artillery. And I had mine. I was going to military intelligence. Went home for 30 days, reported to Fort Holabird, Maryland, for the Army Intelligence School, which was a 14-week course. What else do you want to know about that?
Well, what were your instructors like there?
Okay, they were fantastic because they were training assets. They were training colleagues. They were not trying to get rid of us like the Fort Benning sergeants, nor were they trying to beat us into shape. They knew we had all the basics. We all knew how to handle weapons. So what we were learning was the craft of intelligence gathering and spying.
Okay.
A lot of it was called a counterintelligence school. But to learn counterintelligence, you have to know how to do it, to stop it. So we were taught all the things you need to know to be an intelligent agent. And we had there were two types. There were field agents, which I was, and then there were analyst agents who were the office types. They were the ones that analyzed photographs. They could be cryptologists for codes. They didn't go into the field. I was undercover in actual situations. The analysts were always in an office somewhere. A lot of it I can't tell you. But it was, they were all professionals. They treated us like professionals, and they told us what our risks were and how to avoid them and how to make the best of most situations.
What was the hardest part of the training?
The hardest part, part of our basic training is interrogation, and part of your everyday work is called background checks. Everybody who gets a clearance, like school teachers and police and medical, they do a background clearance to see if you got a police record. But in intelligence, they dig really deeply. You have to know every residence they've been to, every school they've been to. You need personal references to check.
Right.
You fill out a form, and it's about 6 pages, because I did one. You have to do one to get into the school. And, for my parents to find out the address of the place where I was born, took some doing, but it all had to be there.
Right.
So we, as doing the background, have to verify. You verify with municipal agencies, federal agencies, all the agencies. But on those forms, the applicant lists recommendations. You know for sure the recommendations are going to be all positive. They're not going to list an enemy. But your job is to find out people other than the ones they list. And that's a technique you're taught, how to find out other names, the ones they don't want you to hear about. So that's your regular job. And you're told all this in the classroom. And your final test is they do an actual acting program. The classroom has a one-way mirror. Each student is given randomly, is called up, given a fake ID, a 3x5 card on who the person is and what you have to verify. Then you leave the room, go out in the hall, knock on the door, and the person will open the door, and the lights would come on in that room and go black in the classroom. So now you're looking at a performance. The room changes with each student. So one day it could be the superintendent of the apartment they live in. Another could be a school principal. Another could be a roommate. Mm-hmm. So and they use real people. And these people are not people you know. A lot of them were spouses of officers on base. Some were staff you would never see, like the secretary to the commandant. But they all knew their part. Some of them had been doing the same part for years, so they really had the costume and they really acted the part. And their role, they could not lie. They had to answer true questions. But they had to try to derail you and make you go somewhere you're not supposed to go. So when my turn came, I'm saying, this is a snap. I was on the high school newspaper, and I was used to interviewing people who didn't want to be interviewed. And I knew how to ask a question that you get yes or no. I said, this is going to be easy. So I get my credentials, and you show your credentials and say who you are, and get invited in. And some of the characters, one was a little old lady, and she would be in a house dress with curlers, and she wouldn't let you in. She would only talk through the door. And it was all these little tricks to see how you would react. So I knock on the door, and the lady who opens it is in a negligee. And I could hear, although it's all soundproof, the entire class laughing. So I go, okay. So I walk in, identify myself. And she said, can I see your credentials? Well, I don't have very good. And she looks at it and says, oh, very nice picture. And she puts the credentials in her bra. I'm going, and the one rule they tell you is you never let go of your credentials. They never leave your hand. And in my mind, I'm saying, I'm dead. Yeah, how am I going to get my credentials back? So I'm asking the question, but my mind isn't on it, which is exactly what she wanted. So finally, one of the questions is, what was so-and-so's reading habits? And they would tell you, oh, so-and-so. And I said, can I borrow my credentials? I want to make a list. She didn't have an answer for that. So she gave it to me, and I made a list. And then I put it back in my pocket, and I said, so she gave me the books, and I was writing. So I got my credentials back. So after that, when you're finished, you go back in the classroom. The professor and the students give you critique. You did this wrong, you did that wrong, you lost point, you forgot to do this. You never found out, they led you astray. And on mine, they said, you lost points by losing your credential, but you got it back creatively, so we're giving you the points back. But that was the type of classroom we had. It was, if you were doing something about locks, you actually had locks to work on. So it was that type of hands-on.
Hands-on, yeah. So once you finished your specialized training, you became an officer?
No, and then when I graduated, I had two assignments. One was Italy, and one was Officers Candidate School. And I said, okay, I'll go to Officer Candidate School since I'm qualified, and then I'll go to Italy. And they said, there's no guarantee that post will be open when you finish. I'm saying, okay, I'm going to go to Italy first. I could always go to OCS. So that's what I did. I decided not to go to OCS. So I went to Italy, and my assignment was in Italy.
Okay, and how long were you there for?
Almost the rest of 3 years. It was 2.5 years.
Okay.
I was a field agent, undercover, in plain clothes, living off base. Doing things I can't tell you about.
Okay. All right. Did you have a lot of friendships while you were there, or?
Yeah, with the part of the problem of being in intelligence, you're never really you. When you're in the field, you need a persona that is believable.